So this is something I say all the time: technology give it, technology take it. And my typical example is you have a large data center full of computers, and it had a break-in. Everyone is having break-ins these days. Very easy to resolve, very easy to resolve. Close the door, put a guy in a machine gun around outside the door, and disconnect every cable that goes outside. Correct? No one will get it without being shot by the machine gun. But will it be convenient? Will you be able to support your clients online? So every new feature, technological feature that you add that can do something for you will create some kind of secondary unintended consequence. And sometimes those unintended consequences are wonderful. No one really, when the internet starting to become big, thought that internet, the idea of group sourcing. Does everyone know what group sourcing is? Group sourcing is when a lot of people go on the internet and do something for you. For example, we are doing this thing we call the armchair auditor. And what is the armchair auditor? The armchair auditor is the governments put their data online. The US government has over 2,000 files, constantly updated, massive amount of data online now. Federal government, state government, some municipalities. And any one of you can go in there and do an audit. I call it armchair because that's what the Prime Minister of England called it. But the idea is that you get group sourcing. Have you ever heard of an application called Waze?
Yeah.
What does Waze do?
People who drive can share their traffic accident and through their cell phone to let other users to see what is going on right now.
And so Waze group source location. Okay, you, by using Waze, are contributing with information about traffic. And why is Waze maybe even better than traffic in maps, in Google Maps?
They tell you if there's a cop too.
And Maps doesn't do that. And how does that come? Because Christine informed them that there is a cop in there. And so that's a group sourcing where many people, maybe intentionally, but maybe very unintentionally, locate themselves. And they are moving, and the GPS detects how fast they are moving. And the GPS might, and the systems might detect how many people are moving around there to improve that estimate. Okay, that's a group source type of application. Guarantee you that people were not thinking of that type of application when, for example, the World Wide Web was developed. So group sourcing is a very, very big effect, and we haven't even started seeing all the things that group source will do to affect lives. Okay, now this is first one. Replace university classroom with your home college. What's good, what's bad about this?
On the good side, it's convenient. So if you have, for some reason, you have a reason why you're not able to be in the classroom, maybe you're a mother or a parent, you can multitask, basically.
Multitask.
You can do everything. You can stay within
Now
your
you
home.
already started a whole different topic. So let me just put multitask here, and we'll talk about multitask in a second. We're actually going to have a whole multitask. We are going to have a whole session talking about is Google destroying your brains? Yes.
I would say a downside is that your home couch definitely requires a certain level of discipline to get things done.
You were going to say something.
More distraction at home. You have to be more. It's hardest to be engaged in the material when you're at home and there's other things going on.
I say at home there is the refrigerator. That's a big problem, correct? Considering my volume.
I'd say a major advantage is the time that you save not having to commute to school. I mean, I probably spent 5 hours a week getting to and from campus.
Yeah, I spend sometimes 1, sometimes 2 days a week at home, and saves me. I live in the city, so saves me maybe 45 minutes each way commute, and so I can meet with 2 more students. What else, guys? I still haven't heard a lot of things.
No social interaction with coaching, and here you meet with friends. And
So now what the Fox guys are doing is dividing the class in subgroups and have them meet using video Skype or whatever conferencing software, distance-wise. And that's very difficult there because people are all over the world. So it's always difficult. When, for example, we have these projects, for example, with Procter & Gamble. Okay, and one guy is in the Philippines, the other guy is in China, and the third person is in Costa Rica, and fourth one is in Procter & Gamble here in Cincinnati. So once you find the time that works for everyone, you stay every week with that time. Or it gets very complicated. Okay, so that's kind of a complexity of modern world. Okay, let's stay with this. We have a pile of other things to discuss. We'll come back to this. Okay, now I kind of divide the learning environment on what we're trying to do here into content, assessment, learning management, and in the lack of better word, degree, issue some kind of certificate. Okay, and I want to ask a couple of other disruptive questions for you. This idea of bachelor's, master's, PhD, the social of arts, does this make sense in a purely electronic environment?
I think it makes less sense. I think with a purely electronic environment, you could collect skills and maybe even just list out the different courses, or maybe break a bachelor's into little certificates that you kind of collect, and you could customize it a lot more based on what your interests or goals are. So maybe less sense.
I think it depends on the field. Because, for instance, if it's like for medicine or something, I think people as patients still want to know that they're being treated by someone that has a degree in.
But then you're not talking about that. You're talking about degree or certification or etc. You're not talking about learning itself. You're talking about third party. This is the agency problem. Third party believing that the second party is competent to help. It's a little bit of a different story. It's more in this area. What else, guys? Come on, explore this. To be aggressive. Yes, Kat.
Well, in the actual sense of learning and learning the content, I mean, it can be done anywhere, and you don't necessarily need to end up with that degree. but in order to get a job, I mean, today's
That
society,
goes back to degree.
that
correct?
you need the
To
degree.
get the job. And that's the fault of the person that didn't get the degree, or it's the fault from the person that's hiring.
I think it's the fault of the person that's hiring, because you have many people out there that actually don't have degrees but could be specialized in a specific
Well, you know,
field.
the area of computing programming, that's now kind of broke down a little. Now you really want to know what the person can program, not what kind of degree it has. And very often, a degree is an impeachment for that because the person was wasting time getting a degree instead of programming.
Yeah.
People went like this, good. No one goes like this, you're wasting time in getting a degree.
I think it really depends on what field you're trying to get into. But I mean, I
So
think
you're for talking about another form of degree, form of degree or certification. Before talking about, let's use the word proving, just for lack of the better word, proving that you have a certain skill set.
I think it's a total waste of time to be sitting in a classroom getting a degree. I just think that, I mean, I think you have to, so that's why we're all doing it. But I think that you could be much better served in taking the specific classes for a specific career path that you see, and then just having that knowledge and then applying that knowledge to work. I don't think the system of getting a bachelor's and a master's and then a PhD is relevant for anything. Like I would much rather get trained in accounting in 6 months in an intensive course and then go into the field and spend 14 months. And granted, this is a quick program, or some of them MBA programs are 2 years. You're just sitting around waiting. And I think and you can do it as fast as you want if you don't have to get a degree.
Okay, that's very good.
I think that it depends on what kind of, like, as Abby said before, like what kind of field you're going into. But like, if I look at my bachelor's, like, career or like, you know, my academics, it wasn't just like classroom learning. It was like the overall, like, development of the individual, you know. And I think that that gets totally taken away if you're sitting at home and just staring at a computer screen and looking at a person talking to you, or like speaking at you and giving you online quizzes and other things like that. I think it completely takes away and rips apart the whole social aspect of, you know, being in an environment where everyone is learning together and having discussions like we are right now. That's not really going to happen online. So,
Is that what you're saying? There is
Yes.
an angle of socialization that is not content.
yeah.
Interesting.
I agree that sometimes a degree can feel like a waste of time, but I feel like for a lot of people who want to get into the field and have no idea where to start, working towards a degree in the field can help you understand the basics and help you understand where, like, your professors who are well researched in the field know where the field is going, what you need to know, what you should know about the field, so that way going out of school you can better be equipped for what to learn and what not to learn, what historically is proven to get people jobs and what hasn't.
I'm going to get a couple more comments and I'm going to move ahead.
I just to rebuttal his point was more of like, it comes from the top. It comes from the companies that are hiring. So we would have no chance of getting a public accounting job or a job in accounting without that type of experience unless we had hands-on experience, which is hard to get. It requires a degree now. So I mean, it's kind of a necessity that starts from the employment market and then it trickles down into everyone trying to get degrees because that's what is desired.
So the firms need some form of proving, and at this moment they really rely on degreeing for proving. Okay, let's just move a little bit ahead. I think the issue is interesting. We talked a little bit about degreeing really. We haven't talked about these three things. Now, one thing about getting degrees and the value of degrees, Corey, mainly to you, is that one thing that you would imagine is, nothing is for sure, but you would imagine that if you come here for 14 months, take 4 semesters, you are basically taking advantage of the experience of faculties over 30 years that condensed what's important on that field and made it more efficient what you learn. But that's not, you could acquire that by going on the internet, going into the Rutgers digital library, and seeing the courses. I have half of the courses, all the accounting courses you take are in there. Is the narrow domain knowledge, which is not widespread, and you have intellectual capital where we should work. But now our materials are not going to be as good as Fox's. They are better at preparing the materials. But they are going to go out of business eventually on those lower courses because they don't have that market competitive advantage. Remember, we started with that whole thing about what's the reason for this education, and the first reason was economics. And I said this is accumulated that in the United States for education. It's not what you said, it's done much more than that. This is accumulated that at this moment estimated by economists. And I actually think that the current model is unsustainable. Meaning, I love the university the way it is. I would, I always say this to my PhD students and say, you are the last generation that's going to get there. And that's not totally true. Harvard and Stanford and etc. have endowments of billions of dollars, and they'll manage. Now, I like to talk about learning management, learning platforms, and we'll do that in a second. What is this idea of assessment? Yes.
Kind of proving that you know something.
Proving that you know something. And why do you need to prove that you know something? You are a teacher, so you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, you just need to show that you're proficient so that you can move on to the next thing, or...
Show to me.
Show, I guess, yeah, to the teacher, it's one thing.
Two things to show. To show to yourself and to show to someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah, to yourself very important, meaning if you're investing huge amount of money for getting an MBA at Rutgers, you want to know that you learned something, correct? Mm-hmm. And that angle of testing, people tend to forget. Is what's going to happen, just give you an advance, I think, is there'll be a substantial growth on this electronic content on the internet. The cost of this thing is going to go down dramatically. The fact is going to be that there'll be tremendous democratic access to education. Cheap education delivered nearly automatically at very low incremental cost. But there are the countervening factors, which are some of these. In order for you to get an education remotely, you need to have discipline. You are very distracted. You don't really know what to learn. All of these things will have to be compensated. And what's going to happen is they're going to emerge entities. Could be Pearson University, McGraw University, God knows what's going to be. Could be E&Y University. Okay? But they are going to emerge things that will have content that is extremely rich, maybe better than universities. And there have to be a way to assess if the learning was adequate. And the question that Kathleen was asking here, the employer needs to know that I know this. And so what I wanted to derive this discussion to, although I'm open to go another way, is that there will be a whole new set of content provisioning, and there'll have to be another way of certification, because this method of certification doesn't satisfy this kind of medium. Well, what my first question was, BS, MBA, PhD, okay for this era? And we started with yes, maybe, now we are kind of, and then Kathleen was saying, well, you know, if I show what I learned in certain practical fields, like programming, they really don't care if I have a bachelor's, master's, or PhD, correct? But if you want to come here and teach at Rutgers, we are very interested in your certificate at this moment.
The thing about online learning that people govern cheating. If I'm taking an accounting course, how can you tell if I pay someone else to take it for me? You know, I have my friend take it, my dad take it. How do you know? How do you govern that?
What do you mean by cheating?
Just one way to assess how you learn something.
You have to understand, guys, that we talk about online cheating all the time among academics. This is a great concern we have. Okay, but comes from Professor Sanella, who is probably one of the best teachers we have here. He's fantastic. That has a very stringent view on cheating. To me, that basically I don't care too much, because I think Abby is going to work free, and why? 80% of her work will not be individual, will be sharing. And if she cheats well, she'll learn very well how to share. You know what I mean here? It's the concept is going to be changing. The concept of cheating in exams is a concept very linked to the memorization model of education. Okay. The other thing is just come to you. Meaning I am an academic by definition. You've seen my background, but I was at AT&T for 20 years. Bell Labs, and a lot of my work was used in practice. And one thing at AT&T, never do anything alone. Now, even the brilliant inventors, that's what I was at Bell Labs, okay? You have a guy from finance working with you, you have a guy from marketing working with you, and you have a lot of engineers making the stupid things that you do work. Okay? Because you develop an expert system device, and it doesn't work that well, but you bring an engineer, you kind of twinkle it and make it work. But this idea of having the knowledge in your head and the moment of the job resolving it, it's now much more participatory. And it's provoking what I said about, provoking you a little bit about cheating is good, but I certainly am much less worried. Yeah.
I guess I still agree that you need some sort of degree or some way of signaling. I just think that we could transform the way that, like the categories, like one bachelor's in business or whatever, you could break it down with online courses. They could get a whole spread and they could see this is this is his or her, statistical skill, their writing skill. You could just I don't know, I feel like technology could open that up, and it could be, your education could be more customizable, but also employers and people who are interested could just see in so many different ways where your skills are, and that could be completely redone.
Yeah, I think that's a kind of a good thinking there. I think that's the effect eventually of a lot of electronic content, is the segmentation and the ability to customize. Okay, but we are not at the structured level that we really know how to do that. That's why we are proposing what we call the SWAM, which is the School of a Million Courses. I don't know how we came up with this, with SWAM acronym, but that was the guy who talked to you last time. School with a million, or School with a Million. But he forgot of courses. SWAM wouldn't sound very good, correct? It's not SWAM. Yeah, and that was is an idea of segmenting knowledge and customizing. And so you could have, the permutations of things exponentially grow. So if you have the same, we have now, yesterday I was told we have 1,064 modules on the internet in the digital library, and which probably is something like 800 to 1,000 hours of accounting knowledge. Now, if you have these number of modules, combination of them is infinite, correct? So that's the idea behind customizing knowledge. But this idea of customization, I think customization is going to be one of the revolutions of content. Now, I didn't talk a little bit about learning management and assessment. Problem with assessment at this moment. Ben and me concluded already assessment is not only, although you always think the assessment is for the professor, no, assessment is also for the student. And the problem is that the way we administer assessment in education is really more for checking learning by the instructor or by the course. But of course, if a student is very legitimately interested in his learning, or Kathleen is worried about being able to do the programming for this particular job, Kathleen wants to know what she knows and what she needs to know, correct? So that angle has been kind of dwarfed in the other part of the thinking. But the problem with assessment at this moment is what? I'm sure Ben, you'll agree with me once you hear this. Assessment is mainly done by multiple choice. What's the problem with multiple choice?
And it doesn't really get into like higher levels of thinking.
Exactly, it's kind of a pedestrian level of thinking, okay? And why most assessment is multiple choices? It's easy to test, okay? Now you guys were instructors, you know how dreadful it is to grade. And it's not only that it's dreadful to grade, you are not totally sure how good your grading is. You actually don't know how fair you're being. Okay, and then you can come up with all kinds of rules, keyword usage or etc. And those are interesting, but they don't make your grading much better. Okay, keywords, maybe the keywords you chose are not very good keywords. Okay, so there is no easy way on this thing. But I think our swarm is going to be all multiple choice based, because I don't have a good alternative. Okay, now, this is something that has lacked tremendously in the educational structures, is this whole idea, you know, for example, I would like to just turn on my computer here and say, Ben, and find out more about how much Ben is learning. And he read this chapter, he didn't read this chapter, he responded badly on this assessment. He's very worried because his dog is sick. No, I'm serious. Okay, you really would like to have a kind of closer, more intimate relationship. And if you are a Don in Oxford and you supervise learning, and you have 5 students to supervise, you have that level of understanding of personality, conditions of life, what person learned, and etc. But you know, that's not an economics that can be sustained in the school or in any school. So, but this is an area technology can help a lot. With group sourcing, with comparison of the student with other students, with tracking what content they downloaded, maybe with following his eyeballs where he's reading. And we could come up with even more, maybe tracking his mental waves, just being a little bit aggressive here, but etc. But you don't mind these 4 components, correct? These are reasonable components to think, and actually this is what we are trying to work. Okay, now I put a couple of things here more aggressive here is monitor student location for attendance, monitor student cell phone usage and computer access. What do you think?
I know people probably won't like that, or maybe, but I think it's totally fair to let someone, if you're saying that I'm going to sit here and learn and I'm going to be disciplined and I'm not going to be distracted, then I think you should be open to proving that through letting someone monitor whatever you're doing. Otherwise, you're just going to sit there and get nothing.
That's an interesting, unusual attitude, but I like it. Yeah.
I think most people are not going to like it because for privacy reasons, firstly, and I think it's going to be an expensive thing to be able to monitor.
If it can't be automated, it's not doable. Has to be substantially automated. Now, technology give it, also technology take it. Technology is giving you a way to give a very intimate relationship with your student. technology is taking away your privacy. Correct? And remember what I said about privacy last time? It's gone, but it's not totally gone. I just one more angle here. Do you think it makes a difference if you are monitoring cell phone usage and etc. to kindergarteners or college students or executive people in senior executive programs? Yes.
I mean, I've already had a class at Rutgers that was online, and the site would tell you how much time you spent on their website, what you did while you were on their website, and compared your profile to everyone else in the course.
And what did you find of that? How did you feel about that? Did you find it intrusive?
I didn't find it I thought it was interesting because I found that I was reading the book a lot more than other people, and people were spending a lot more time doing like the practice tests. And I thought that was
good feedback for you.
Yeah.
But when you thought that the professor was looking at that too, what did you feel?
I thought it was fair. The class was completely online, so I couldn't really argue against it. If you're taking 10 minutes every week while other people are taking 3 hours at least to do the same thing.
But you are smart. You're smarter, you only need 10 minutes. No, I'm just being facetious, but obviously that's the value. The reason I was asking about kindergarten, etc., is that my daughter used to do some escapades when she was, I went to pick her up in a party. She wasn't in the party, she was visiting some guy, okay? And I was ready to her neck. And I thought at that time it would have been fair to put a cell phone on her and find out where she was. Now, when she was 18, I don't think that would be particularly good, correct?
I think it's different if it's a parent-child thing versus
oh,
a teacher.
okay, so that's the other contingency. What is the relationship? Professor, student, parent, child. You know, Mochi has a chip on his ear. Okay, so I know if I lose Mochi, I know where to find him. Okay, am I impinging on his liberty?
No.
Maybe, but
it's for
my
his own
motives
good.
are stronger.
Yeah.
I think if you're gonna track people's cell phones as an employer or as college professors or a faculty or something like that, it needs to somehow turn off when they're home or not working. Or you have to be able to turn it on or off when they leave the building. I don't think your employer should know once you leave, unless you've turned it back on to start doing work
Employers should know
again.
how much you talk on your cell phone while you're working.
See, if it's in the building, I don't mind. I don't think once you're out of the building, I know a lot of people work from home and stuff like that, so maybe track that stuff, but there's got to be a way to turn it
How
off.
about if I tell you, you can work at home, but you have to be tracked?
How about the time that I'm working be tracked, but as soon as I turn it off, they shouldn't know anything else I'm doing.
Oh, so you're willing to be tracked to work at home?
I mean, if wouldn't mind if they saw that I logged on from home to do work, because they kind of have to track that stuff. You have to sign in and things like that, but they shouldn't know anything beyond. If I go out and when I log in, I don't mind them tracking.
If I take that cute co-worker that works with me, comes over to my house, you really don't want them to be able to track
that kind of
right?
stuff.
No, just this is actually the contingencies. If you have a parent who is getting very old and senile and gets lost, putting a chip on his behind to be able to find him is totally legitimate. If you have kids that are young, preschool age, and you're trying to protect them, tracking them is very legal. Listening to what your neighbor is saying doesn't sound to be a very good idea. While we stay with this kind of certification model, there is an obligation of measure. You taught high school. Student paid very expensive private high school, correct? If he doesn't learn, it's his problem. Not really. You are the teacher, you gave him a grade. And if he didn't learn, you were lying in your grade. That's okay, and this is the thing I was talking about the packages that Pearson, etc. are going to be together. Going to be very rich packages. They're going to invest a lot in these packages. And certainly, unless you have a very inspired faculty member, they are going to be much better than the faculty. That's very sad for a person like me who live their lives in academia, love academia. Okay, so this is the, this was a very good discussion. I nearly think that I don't need the slides and just give it up, but let's just go to them fast. Okay? And so actually this was, Professor Alice gave me help with this. Previously there was no alternative to having a teacher in front of the classroom since learning was only a scalable exercise of the book. Now in theory, teaching could become as scalable as a book or a TV show. Now this is the thing that kind of impressed me with the Fox presentation. Fox has about 75 faculty members full-time and about 200 full faculty members that teach for them. And you know, in that model, they don't need very many faculty members, correct? They just need someone, they don't have automatic grading, so they need someone to grade. And when I asked them about learning management, I didn't think they do very much. Okay, and so for that model, I don't know. And you know, I kind of asked him, I said, what do your faculty thinks of this? Oh, they love it. And I said, how come you have 220 faculty teaching for you, only 75 were paid? I didn't get an answer. And this is actually a point that Michael made, is that do once use multiple times in subjects that don't change all that often. Meaning, I am so envious. I teach technology. So I need to kind of update what I do pretty much every year. You teach certain subjects. I'm not going to say a subject because it insults someone. You know, it's the same class notes that you had 10 years ago, you still use them. Subjects that change often. Even accounting doesn't change that much. Okay, and this is the whole thing about reengineering their learning process, and it deals with what we were talking before, is bachelor's, master's, PhD courses, courses of 14 sessions, 3 hours each time. This whole structure that's designed for classroom behavior might not be very good for other structure. That allows one to engineer the entire learning process and ask fundamental questions to value human teacher-made circumstances. That's exactly what you discussed. Some have suggested soon there will be a handful of star teachers who will make mock courses, and everyone else, assuming they are even needed, will be adjuncts helping students with homework. Isn't this kind of the conclusion we reached here? Yes, no, maybe. Somewhere. This may be far-fetched, but it's not far removed from what we have today, where a few stars write textbooks and everyone else teaches using their texts. Everyone is looking sad here. I invested all this money in going to pre-A professional accounting, and this is kind of getting obsolete. With everything else is getting obsolete. Now this is kind of economics. We cannot just think about supply of teaching, but we also demand side. Can millennials be raised in a digital world that can handle traditional classroom? And I think that's a very important point that you brought in here, because learning by yourself takes tremendous discipline. Meaning there are people that are self-learned that were the biggest scientists in the world, they never went to school. Correct? Now, how about the person that texts for 5 minutes, watches TV, those two programs at the same time while he's eating? Attention span, very narrow. And that's the millennial. Correct? So maybe the millennials are not set for this. Maybe we'll need to start training millennials to be set for this. Yes?
So, in teaching high school and whatnot, I mean, I had a lot of kids, and cell phones were a constant, like, oh, you can't see me on my cell phone. Like, it was a constant battle of putting cell phones and other technology way, particularly when doing the traditional sense of PowerPoint lecture and traditional lecture for and problems versus when thankfully I was teaching science, so like I could easily do a hands-on manipulation activity. Those became much more effective than trying to do, like, at one point I tried to, because I didn't have a projector, to do the notes on the board, and that was just an epic fail. Could not keep their attention. But by switching it into an interactive, stimulating event, like the PowerPoints had to be very short, bulleted, could not have a lot of information on it, but it had to have extra buzzwords and, kind of pizzazz to get their attention, to keep their eyes off of the board. There had to be something extra there other than just traditional text.
Because they are millennials, correct?
Yeah.
They need the like input all the time. Have you seen the film? Little robot goes around input. What's his name?
Oh. I don't remember.
Yeah, it's about 10 years old film. But yeah, that's millennials. And I want attention from my granddaughter. Pick up my iPad or my cell phone and put little game there, toddler game. Oh my gosh, mesmerized. Totally mesmerized. Okay, so I get attention if I want it, but it has to be gaming, it has to be this type of things. Okay, so we cannot just take supply. Teaching can millennials ways. In any case, the direction will come down to whether students learn more from a MOOC taught by a star teacher from Harvard or MIT with all the manner visual tricks built in the broadcast, or from an adjunct earning $4,000 with no benefits teaching 6 classes in 3 different schools. He's looking like this, that's the teaching world, correct? When I say that in all department meetings, it's not popular. Okay. So this is Michael's thing, so I kept it there. The bottom line is that human instructors will increasingly have to justify what they do and how we do it. Online courses provide us keep adding richness and texture to the offering, which in 10 years will make the current YouTube offering seem as quaint as old Open University. Open University in England has been doing this kind of thing, self-instruction courses for 50 years. But of course now they have better technology. This kind of competition with a mental change the universe. And so basically these human instructors will not be able to compete the behavior aspects of teaching. This is meaning what this slide basically summarizes our discussion. Behavior aspect teaching, it keeps immature young people out of trouble, socialize them in state with takes, put them into a profession like being an accountant or a CPA. Okay? Now the MOOCs are a little bit different than what I think is going. The MOOCs are basically things developed by Harvard, Stanford. We are doing a MOOC now for basically divulging introductory courses to millions of people. That's what they are. They are not going to be the tool of modern education. They are just kind of this interim tool. Now, the thing I want you to think, just as a very extreme thing, I think you are going to empathize with this, is our digital library has X number of views. Half of the views are outside of the United States in English-speaking countries or people that speak English. And some of those views go to people that never would have a chance to get anything close to this content, never had a chance to get a university education, maybe not even a high school education. They need to know English because the courses are English. And the courses, very honestly, many of the videos are crap. Terrible videos. But the content is fine. The content that we teach here in PA. The first course that we recorded was all the professors that were willing to be recorded in PA. So PA is out there everywhere. And for some people, this is a godsend. They'll learn. Then they have to figure out a way to get a certificate. It has. Okay, this is a question I always ask. what is a cultured person in the age of Google?
I think a cultured person is a person that has a wide range of experiences, not just information from Google, because you can search stuff on Google. It's different from, I guess, knowing it on a personal level or having experienced it yourself.
I thought that what is a cultured person was a question, but then you said in the age of Google, because
Of course I said in the age of
well,
Google.
I mean that totally changes it, because I agree. I mean, I agree just because having been able to go places is one thing. I understand, but it's not just as good, but the online, like, what do we call this? We had like online field trips or whatever, where you could go and see whatever.
You know how I learned geography in Brazil? Professor came in, opened like a chart he had with the drawing of the United States, and my lessons of geography were to memorize states of the United States. What are the capital of 160 countries around the world? That was my geography lesson. What they get in geography today is fantastic. They have virtual travel experiences. Wonderful. They see girls in bikini in the beach of Ipanema, where I grew up. Okay, that's pretty good.
I think it's also, I mean, a cultured person in today's society with Google and all of that is someone who can, share their experiences, but also can express themselves and talk and communicate with others, not just through texting or just through, verbalization, but somebody who can hit all of those and talk to a variety of people, not just because. So going potentially into the tech world, there's a certain kind of community, a certain kind of communication that they have and the way they talk and interact. But then coming from, say an educational standpoint and whatnot, there's a whole nother way people with a teaching background communicate and whatnot. And I think a cultured person can, bridge those gaps between maybe something very technical and something everyday.
So did you notice Kathleen and Abigail kind of bypassed my question? If I had asked this question 5 years ago and didn't say in the age of Google, the answer would be emphasize on what the person remembers and knows. My example of cultured people, Professor Sudi, that retired last year, used to teach cost accounting here, and my brother, who knew everything about everything. They read all the time and et cetera, and remembered. My brother, you could even question him because he knew so much that he could be asked and you would not dare it because he knew so many other things. So he was unbelievable. But did you notice both answers were not about exactly what he remembers? It just already changed with the ages. You're already talking about experiences. And you started that too, Ben. You're talking about travel to places and et cetera, et cetera. So is that the concept of a cultured person is now changing into behavioral experiences?
Yeah, because you can look up very quickly anything, and most people don't retain it or find the need to retain it. Like earlier you said, when you needed to get an article, you had to go to the library, get it. Sometimes you couldn't keep it, so you had to make notes on it. So yes. I would think that someone like that remembers it more and can utilize that. Whereas today, it's like, I don't really need to remember that. I can always look it up.
Okay.
It may have changed. I do still think you need the, reading, writing, critical thinking skills, the basic arithmetic skills. The way you learn it might have changed, but I do still think you need all of those. Although maybe the experiential is more important, but to say someone's cultured, I still think you need some of those basics.
Oh, basics. Reading and writing.
Maybe even beyond
reading
basic.
and writing and basic math probably is in there. Okay. And before Gutenberg, maybe hundreds of years before Gutenberg, not much before, only scribes really knew how to read and write. And so even our culture depended pretty much on verbal history. And when writing started being developed, there was a thing called scripta continua. In Latin, it means continuous writing. There was no spaces between the words. And the scribes actually could read it for you, interpreting it. And then they started doing this thing called silent reading. And you would manage to get a book to your, usually you were a monk, and to your room, and quietly reading as opposed to with someone reading it to you. And Saint Augustine gets some credit for being one of the first people that did that. Okay? And when many people were reading it, then you needed to make writing a little bit easier. You didn't have to be a professional to be a writer. So they started separating the words. But then still, you know, a book was extremely expensive and difficult thing to get. And the culture of everyone came from verbal raconteurs, verbal history. Okay, and then Gutenberg appeared, and one book became much less precious because he could mass produce books. And I think 50 years after Gutenberg, enough books were printed equivalent to the rest of whole history of written history. And Gutenberg went bankrupt. I guess he wasn't a good businessman. But one of the guys who copied his technology became very rich. So not people that invent become rich. But if you see how culture has accumulated, changes in way, was with verbal history, maybe musical history, raconteurs, and then scripta continua, then scripta, and now knowledge is a lot of electronic content, transforming into packaged content, and the other part of the story is remembering things, not discounting the baseline that you need to have at this moment to deal with the means of communication. Remembering things is not so important anymore. It's still very important because the skills we were talking before, linking things together, is very, very important. That's what I'm trying to teach you, is remember certain things that are the baselines to be able to link it. Because you don't want to go and check on Google every time, and you cannot develop a balance sheet in a week if you never did a balance sheet out of Google. Correct? You don't know how to do it. So there is some basic knowledge you need to have. But this question about what you need to remember in your education has been totally challenged in the last 10 years. And so this is actually a question very much what you are raising here, Joshua. What knowledge is necessary for civilized reading? And you said here, you said read and write and arithmetic. Do you really need to know geography? I'm going to Paris. Is that in Ohio? History. Now, I am very challenged. My education was in Brazil. So I don't know a lot about American history. So now and then I kind of fall myself in some big quandaries of not understanding what people are talking about. When people start talking about Americana, I'm lost. And you know, this is actually the question about this course. How much technology you need to understand? You know, I taught this course, I joined Rutgers in '89, and I have taught this course many of the years, maybe most of the years, maybe 1 or 2 years off. And in the beginning, I used to teach you things like, this is a computer, open it up. Okay, when VisiCalc came out, I taught you how to do the spreadsheets, taught how to use word processing. Changed things, huh? Totally. And we had that little boot camp at the beginning that you had. Abe teaches you some computer stuff, just to make sure. But what Joshua, civilized knowledge includes Excel and Word, correct? Was it like that? And not long ago. And you know, this is the question we have been asking, what's the effect of search databases? And remember, Google is just the current stage of searching. There'll be much better searching reasonably soon. Probably there is already, but Google has a lot of market for it. And so, and this is actually a good summary of what we thought. What needs to be memorized? Can you teach logical, by the way, can you teach logical thinking?
Because there's a theory, but in practice you have to, get it yourself.
But can I pick up a class and make them better thinkers by the end of the class? Probably. Showing methods of analyzing, showing how I resolve. You know, people are like monkey see, monkey do. Okay, people copy, which is good. And so if I resolve some problems or I derive a thinking, you learn how to derive that thinking. So actually, critical thinking can be taught, and in different areas, critical thinking is different. 5 more minutes and then we go. And these are actually the questions that we ask. And we'll have the session in electronization, and electronization is transforming a process from a manual process to some technology-aided process. And I don't like the word digitization because many things are analog, not digital. Okay, and so I always talk about this. And the examples that we are going to have a whole class on this. The examples that electronize better is banks, travel agencies, and brokerages. Those are the examples. And now what's happening is education is being electronized. Okay. Just for you to understand the jargon, MOOC stands for Massive Open Online Courses. And the things around it is what we discussed up to this moment. I actually am not terribly worried about MOOCs. MOOCs were a big thing a couple of years ago, and they still have places like Coursera that does a lot of MOOCs. But actually, MOOCs is just kind of an initial salvo into electronic content, and the models and the customization and the organization of electronic content is going to change. And by the way, you guys said something very good. I didn't point it out before, but first set of sentences we have here is all about money. Isn't that what you said? Economics matter. And economics does matter. Economics matter a lot, and the economics are going to determine here. And the whole idea that a certain technology is better than other technology, therefore it will be adopted, doesn't follow. Actually, Betamax and VHS. Betamax was a much better technology, VHS was adopted. Apple is a much better technology, was at the beginning than IBM PC. IBM PC had 96% of the market. It's economics. Why? Apple kept the patents and the intellectual rights private and expensive. The IBM PC technology, the PC technology, not even IBM exactly, was open sourced. So everyone could manufacture their own PC standard. And you see that in cell phones now, in smartphones too. Apple is losing market share. Is the iPhone better? It was when it began, a smartphone, but it's not anymore. Why? Open source technology. And in learning, the same kind of thing is going to happen. And so this is kind of Professor Issa, and he was one of our PhD students, now he teaches government accounting. And this is his prescription, what you can do now. More hybrid courses are instructorless classes, more studying the material at home, higher integration technology class. And that's what I always tell the dean. I say we're not talking about distance learning. We are talking about technological aided education. And the class experience, etc. So it talks about some other things here. Use of mobile apps, better use of wikis, etc., etc., etc. Okay, I think this is about it. I used to take my kids to ski around in these local areas, and I got wiped out twice in a row with my daughter, who was about 4. This is a long time ago. Since then, we went to Alta for 10 years, and now we go to Jackson Hole, Wyoming every Christmas. So last year I went to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and when I went to buy my tickets, they gave me the card, RFID card. And I said, great, they are not going to punch my ticket anymore. And I was very excited. No punching my ticket, so I went to the line, the thing opened automatically. I was very happy with the whole thing. They told me, put it in your pocket, don't put anything else in your pocket, etc., etc. So I was very excited about the whole thing. And I'm still very excited about it, but I kind of learned about the process that I think gave me a lot of insights on what this acquisition of technology really is. And I thought I wanted to share with you my generic idea of piggybacking that we're going to be talking quite a lot about. So this is Jackson Hole, Wyoming. It's beautiful or what? Right? Turns out that after 12 years skiing in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, my daughter marries a guy that she met totally different place from Jackson Hole, Wyoming. So that's why my wife didn't go to last year to Wyoming. Can you imagine this? Just because she married, I don't know why she didn't go, but she did. Okay? And so it's a card with a little RFID thing. And it opens tremendous opportunity of integration. And I want you to just think a little bit of what this card can do for you. Can you predict? I said it allows you to go through the gate and not punch. But what is this doing for the Jackson Hole skiing resort? Yes?
They can track which courses are the most popular.
Track your location. Location. Courses.
It also speeds up the efficiency of when you're getting in line instead of having someone there like scanning your ticket each time. You just kind of walk right through it.
They still have someone there. I actually never really understood why they do that.
Yeah, I don't know.
And maybe they're afraid that you jump. Yeah. What else?
We can probably track the average time it takes people to complete certain courses.
I'm going to jump to here.
I think for safety, yeah, God forbid there was an avalanche, you'd be able to locate if people were still stuck on the mountain.
I'm not sure if it will go through snow, but good thought. And that I never thought of that.
Yeah, but wouldn't that have like who's at least on that course? And if you know the average times of traveling down the course, it'd be, I feel like, an easier database to pull like who might still be left there. You might not be able
Okay,
to
so
find
it's still
them.
a safety thing, correct?
Yeah.
What else, guys?
You probably put money on your account so that they can track where you're going, spending on concessions and things like that.
Ah, okay. Money in account, concessions.
If the RFID card was identified you individually, they could tailor advertising towards your entrance.
I'm going to say 1, 2, 1 advertising. It's an 020. It's kind of tracking advertising based on you. Is it personally identified to you? Most likely because you probably paid with credit card. I don't think too many people go to a to a ski area and pay cash. Yeah, they do, but not too much. Yeah.
I mean, just there's minor environmental savings because you're not using all the trees, so it's getting reused over and over again. You can use it for.
Okay, so some environmental things. I thought when we were talking about environmental things is that if no one is skiing in a particular lift, you close the lift. Right?
Yeah.
If you're a frequent skier, maybe they can give you a different level membership in that card or something.
Okay, so you can have mileage plans. Have you already figured out that they can figure out who you are skiing with? So your wife knows if you're skiing with a pretty girl, if she has access to that data. Yeah.
I guess we thought there's like a sense of loyalty to that skiing resort, like to come back to that skiing resort.
Okay, you think there is a retention effect? Why?
They'll probably have money in the account they want to spend.
Oh, okay, that's a good, yeah, if you residual amount, or you can do incentive plans to make people come back, like they do in Harris Casino.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me just show you a couple of slides here. You already kind of hit most of them. But actually, I went skiing 3 days, had bought, and then I realized I could replenish it online. So I went online, found Jackson Hole, found this thing here, enrolled, and it's actually Amazon, I think, that they have. They got the same interface of Amazon, and they popped it onto it. So it's kind of an e-commerce thing. You can pay with credit cards, etc., etc. They can do, and it doesn't fit very well. It's quite nice. It's quite nice what they did here. So this is the reload. Reload online, okay? And then you have a history of tickets and passes, and you can cross-sell products like adult lessons, rentals, access, kids lessons, gift cards. And then when you're buying it, you put it in your shopping cart. See, it's not cheap. It's $104 for a day, senior citizen. Okay? And you see this is the process. Review card, billing, assign product, select payment, review and pay. Like the way they did it. So actually I thought it was very nice what they do. And you actually dealt with some of these things. Actually, your list here is pretty comprehensive. Now, can we just talk a little bit about this and these things? Like, what analytics can be gathered? Yeah.
What time of day of the week is the most popular for people to go skiing?
And why would you do that?
So you can get teams together and.
So you can staff.
Yeah.
You can staff. How stable are those relationships? Is every week, Wednesday, always the same?
I think generally it follows a pattern for certain times of the year. Like the weekends will usually always be busier. Maybe if it's in the summertime, it might get busier in the weekdays. I think it usually follows a pattern. It repeats the same pattern.
Yeah, we usually decompose process. It's an analytic question. Decompose process in long-term goals, seasonality, and then weekly patterns. But depending on the phenomenon, you might have other things. Sometimes the season is not a yearly cycle, sometimes weekly cycle, etc., etc. Why am I talking about this? Because this is actually audit analytics. Okay, it's trying to predict what's going to happen based on the historical data that you have. So that's good. So that's one data that you're collecting. Okay, and you know, the one thing is many of these things have a privacy statement. But the private statement is 10 pages long in small characters, and you are eager to go skiing, not to read the privacy statement. So what do? Sign it and go ahead. Correct? So that's not great protection. And what you are worried, I certainly am worried, is about, not about Jackson Hole having my bacon. It's about they selling it to marketeers of clothes or whatever. And so I start getting my 500 emails I get to them. Okay, and as much as you cancel out, and you have to be very careful when you cancel out, because sometimes the cancel out is what they want. They want you to, it's like a spoofing type of thing, to find out which passwords, which accounts are active to be marketed to. And the other thing is maybe there is some, if you click on something on a particular page, it might be activating some code to do something nasty behind it. So if you don't know someone mailing you something, don't open the attachment, ever. So what are the good rules for passwords here? Never use a dictionary word. Never click on something that you don't know what you're clicking on. And password-wise, have a rule for yourself, some kind of rule that if people compare two of your passwords and they look at them, they don't know what your rule is. It's very difficult for someone to capture 5, 6, 7 of your passwords.